Mad Canggu in beautiful Bali, Indonesia. For those of you joining us for the first time, SpeakuP is all about motivation. In fact, we're award-winning for motivation, and we believe that people inspire people, that the more conversations we have, the more perspective we gain, the more compassionate we become. We believe there is unity in diversity and that we can collectively uplift humanity by sharing stories that inspire change, impact, and create time for us to pause and consider what we're doing and why we're doing it. I am very honored today to have my next guest. We are running now over 3 years, about 250th episode we're coming up upon, and I've been given the honor to share this stage with my next guest. He is no stranger to inspiring those by doing what he does, and in fact, inspiring us all to do the same. He is a social entrepreneur with an MBA from Honors from NYU, having worked at some top organizations like Goldman Sachs. However, in 2013, he left that corporate world to explore the actual world. It took him to over 100 countries, running 25 marathons, and launching his social enterprise. Today, we're going to dive deep into his personal journey to understand where he was and where he came to be, and the work he's doing now to inspire communities and inspire us to give back to those communities that we call home away from home. Please help me welcome my next guest, Tarek Kholoussy.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me, everyone. And special thanks to Bob and Robert and Ichi at Tropical Nomad. Excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. So, I mean, people have, if they haven't read your bio, I did a little recap, but it would be really interesting for us to understand, before all the travel, before the nomadism, before the marathons and launching Nomads Giving back and Nomads Skillshare, you were working the corporate life and you were leading a certain type of life. If you could take me back to before 2013, maybe a moment, a pivotal moment where you decided you wanted to make a change. What were you doing? Where were you? What did you feel like in that moment?
Yeah, great question. It's really interesting to reflect back on how different my life is today than where it was in the pre-2013 when I left. So, I grew up in more of a conventional path where I went to a pretty good school, and then I ended up getting a job in New York City. Believe it or not, I was a suit and tie, short hair, pale, just roaming around from skyscraper to skyscraper in New York City. At the time, that's what felt right for me. I ended up arriving to New York City, building my career there 2 months before 9/11. And so obviously 9/11 for me and for many people was a pivotal moment. And it wasn't and actually that day I was supposed to fly from the same airport that 2 of the hijacked planes flew from. Oh, and of course I felt the impact on my city and my people. So it was really tough, but at the same time, several months later, I lost my first job. And this was at Arthur Andersen. At the time, people probably heard of it, but the reason they don't know it today is because it went under, and so with it went my job. And so it was a rough early patch of building my career. But I look back and I realized that that's what actually helped serve me well, was those challenges. Like, I really believe we grow through what we go through. And what that lesson taught me was that I felt really vulnerable being unemployed for half a year, just after I thought I was going to take over the world and be a big city guy. And so when I finally did land a job, I felt like I just never wanted to be that vulnerable again. So I just prioritized my professional growth above anything else, to a fault. So that's what happened, is for the next dozen years, I prioritized and focused on my career. And throughout those years, I eventually didn't feel so vulnerable because, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It was a bit of a roller coaster of a career, but overall, I ended up, getting some impressive roles and making more money than I needed. And knowing how it was to be vulnerable, I saved a lot more money than I needed to. And with that, I kind of built this nest egg so that I can create more freedom in my life. I did never imagine that it would end up living abroad and doing these things, but at the time I just, was extra safe. And then around 2013 is when a lot of things have changed. But, Yeah.
So before we hit on 2013 and start that journey, you mentioned it was 9/11. So of course, such a significant moment that anyone who was around that time knows where they were when they heard the news, what was happening. In that moment, you felt, like you said, vulnerable. You landed a job, then you lost that job, and decided that, okay, for the next, you said about 12 years, you're going to do what you had to do to ensure that you had stability and you had safety. In those 12 years, was there ever a moment or many moments where you felt, because we get those clues from the universe, right, when we should make a change, and sometimes we don't listen to them because what's conventional, what's stable is easier, and it's, growing up in that conventional society, it's what we consider to be the safe path. Can you remember any clues at that time that may have come up that you maybe chose to ignore because it was uncomfortable to have to address, or you decided that, I already been through a lot, my world has been through a lot, my city's been through a lot, so I'm just going to take the path safest? So were there any clues at that time that you look back at now and you're like, wow, that was a sign that maybe I should make a change, and I didn't?
Before making the change? Yeah, so the first thing that came to mind is that a couple years ago, I was looking at my Amazon account, and I somehow found this hidden old wish list. And I saved a book that I wanted to buy that I never did. And it was saved on October 11th, 2001, 1 month to the day after 9/11. And the book was called How to Start a Nonprofit. And it blew my mind when I saw that.
Chills, because I'm like, here we are.
Yeah, because it was in my wish list for 2 decades before I got around to doing something like this. I was in that path where, the upward mobility path of trying to grow your career. When you're inside, when a fish is in water, the fish doesn't know what's in water. So I didn't know what I was lacking. But then I started doing some travel abroad, and I started going to more and more developing countries during my vacations. And I wanted to get away as far as I could, not just geographically, but also socioeconomically, culturally. And I started doing some volunteer projects on those vacations. And it was during those times when I came back to New York City, put the suit back on a Monday, and I realized I just had the best week of my entire year. I just felt like I had the most impact in 1 week of the entire year. And I thought, I'm going to have to wait another 50 weeks to go have this kind of feeling again. And I just got so inspired by the local communities, by the fellow foreigners that were often by my side, that were a little bit more like-minded on where I wanted to take my life. And then those were the clues. Those were definitely the clues. But it still took. It's a process. Any big change in life is a process, and you never know which variables play each impact.
Yeah, and I asked that question because I think for some of us in the audience or who are joining us online, we might be having those clues. I know I've had them, ignored them, and here we are. But it's interesting for us to maybe take pause and reflect, and maybe we don't make that change, as you said, in that moment, but you start seeking out opportunities and things that feel more aligned to what you want to do. So as you said, you started traveling to more remote destinations, socioeconomically they were different, and that started to spark change for you. So what was that moment right before 2013 when you actually left? That was that trip or maybe that moment that sparked that change for you?
Yeah. So at the time I didn't, analyze and self-reflect, but after some time I did spend a lot of time reflecting, and I realized that there were 4 key moments that sort of combined to make that difference for me. The first one is really unfortunate. My cousin Sama, who was just a couple years older than me, suddenly passed away. And I was 33 at the time. And that was the first time anyone close to me who I loved had died. And so that was a real, wake-up call. We all know we're going to die, right? But knowing someone close to you, especially well before their time, it makes you wonder, wow, I can die too at any moment. And what experiences do I want to have in this lifetime before it's over? And then these 4 things all happened around the same time. So that was one. The second thing is Hurricane Sandy hit New York City. And I was living in the Village in Manhattan. And the power, we had this ominous blackout for 4 days. It felt very Armageddon-ish. And, hundreds of people died. And coincidentally, I had signed up and registered to run my very first marathon that same weekend. And it was the first time in New York City's history that the marathon got canceled because of this natural disaster. So in lieu of the run, a lot of the runners and we went to Staten Island where the race was beginning to help the area that got hit the hardest. And there was this family that I helped like clear their home. And I was just so inspired by this family story because they were stuck in their attic for 2 days. Their entire 2 floors were underwater. And they didn't know how bad it was because there was no connection. They didn't know if it was like a whole, there was fear that it could have been like the storm of the century. And 2 little boys died in their backyard. And yeah, and just seeing how resilient this family was, and they just lost everything in their house. And, you know, it really hit me. But then 2 weeks later, I was able to run my first marathon. And I signed up, I hopped over to the Philadelphia Marathon. And Philly is the city of my birth, actually. And in many ways, it felt like a rebirth because I was doing the impossible. Like, I had never thought in a million years that a marathon was in my cards because I wasn't the fittest guy for a bunch of my life. I smoked cigarettes for 23 years.
So why choose a marathon?
Yeah. I'm not proud of it, but, you know, when you're in a high-stress job and for many reasons, you know, I didn't eat healthy, I didn't exercise much, and so I never thought a marathon was in my cards. But I went for it, and it felt like a rebirth because, you know, doing the impossible in this one part of my life made me feel like maybe I can do the impossible in another part of my life. And there's just like a lot of serendipity. Like during the race, I ran by the hospital I was born in, like where I entered this world. And then at the end of the race, you know, everyone takes a finished photo of themselves, and I took a selfie. And there was a street in Philadelphia with all these flags. And I didn't realize till afterwards that when I took that selfie, the flag of Egypt was behind me. And that's my motherland. That's where my family's originally from.
Wow.
So there's like a lot of like nice serendipity. And then the fourth thing that happened that all combined to make me want to make that move is that one day I was walking home from my gym to my flat, and I saw this woman moving her boxes on a trolley across the street, and they were falling off the trolley. And I ran up and I asked her, "Can I give you a hand?" And she said, "Yes, please, thank you." So in these 10 minutes of talking to this woman, she changed my life. Her name's Chrissy, I know her now. But I asked her, "So what's going on? Are you moving?" And she's like, "Well, I lived in New York for 15 years. I did the whole corporate thing. And then this past year, I took a sabbatical, and I'm going to go after, and I went after my dream." "What's your dream?" She said, "I wanted to explore 100 countries.
Wow.
And I was like, "What? 100 countries?" And I was like, "So now you're done and you're going to go back to the corporate life and start a whole new, like start your job again?" And she said, "No, I'm going to send these boxes to my parents' home, and I'm going to go back abroad, and I'm going to go after my second dream." And I was like, "What's your second dream?" She said, "To create a social enterprise." And again, I was like, "What? Like, who is this woman living my dream life?" So I went home, sent her an email, and I said, like, "Hey, Chrissy, so nice bumping into you. I hope our paths cross again one day." And it did. But that's probably for later in the story. But honestly, those 4 things, my cousin's sudden death, the Hurricane Sandy, running my first marathon, and meeting an everyday hero like Chrissy. You know, it's someone that you can relate to that really inspires me, who's living a life just like me, same age, same background. So I'm so grateful for those experiences.
Wow, so it's like that perfect storm of, you know, the unfortunate, you know, passing of a loved one to just kind of take stock of your life and how you're living it, to have literally natural disaster impact your environment, to meeting someone who is living the life that, you know, you thought you could do, don't know how to do it, but want to do it, and we're so inspired by. And then to, you know, to take on this marathon, this challenge, as you said, because you mentioned that you were a longtime smoker, but you wanted to kind of do what you thought was impossible and see if it was possible. Why did you make that choice, and why was it a marathon that you wanted to run? Was it because literally of just from the physicality of it? What's the background on that?
Yeah. So I I think I basically, like, as a kid, I was really into sports. I was really active. And then in New York, I sort of just lost it because you get so busy with the work, and New York City is not the easiest place to do some sports, and it's really more of a gym culture. And then one day, my job had this, like, we entered the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge, I think it was called. It was like a 5K in Central Park. And some people were encouraging me to go for it. And to me, a 5K sounded kind of hard, but I was like, all right, what the hell? I'll give it a shot. And I went for it. And I finished. And when I went back to the office, they had a banner for me, like, congratulations, Tarek, on the 5K. And, you know, it might sound kind of silly. It's only 5K, but for me at the time, that was a real challenge. And I'm really kind of goal-driven to a fault sometimes. And basically, after I did a 5K, I'm like, I wonder what a 10K would be like. And then the next
25 marathons later.
Yeah, you know the story. But yeah, you know, then after a 10K, I did the 21K, and then I was like, okay, I think maybe I'm ready for the marathon. And you know, I was really inspired by one of my good friends, my roommate at the time, Sean, who had run the New York City Marathon. And you know, like I told you, I didn't think I was built for it. I didn't think it was in my cards. And I would go watch the New York City Marathon, usually the day after partying for Halloween. You know, maybe a little hungover, and just watching, and I was smoking, and I'm just watching these people, like, who looked really full of life and really happy, and I'm like, why can't I live the life that I want to be? Like, I was really inspired, and fortunately, like, after some wins in your life, you can start to get a little momentum and gain that confidence. And yeah, and then I just fell in love with it. I feel like it's a great way to stay on track and stay healthy. And I did a lot of marathons, like, outdoors in the trails, and so connecting with nature is a really great thing. And I'm really busy-minded, you know, like the New York City busy-minded kind of guy. So for me, especially once you get past that first hour, it's like a form of meditation. You know, you're not looking at your phone for a while, or I usually listen to music or sometimes audiobooks. And, you know, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 hours into it, you can, I lose myself.
And in doing that, you then met who kind of gave you the blueprint for the life that you wanted or desired. And she, as you said, had seen 100 countries, and you'd already started, you know, kind of working with social causes. So now when that moment happened, you realized, wow, she's doing something that I want to do. That blueprint, take me on the next stage of that. What did you do with that? Okay,
so this was 2013. I had planned it so that I run my second marathon in DC the day before I took off. Like, my last day in the office was, I think it was March 15th, but who's keeping track? And then the 16th was the marathon, and the 17th was St. Paddy's Day, and I flew straight to my motherland to see my family. And then I just started traveling. And the first year I did that, I did a 4-month fellowship with Kiva, this amazing microfinance organization. And I was placed in Kenya. And it was my first time ever visiting sub-Saharan Africa. And it was just so life-changing for me, you know, to really opened my heart and opened my mind in ways I didn't know was possible. And that's when I really felt like, okay, I feel like I have a social obligation to do something more to change lives, and at least within my power. And then I just started, traveling, and then I went back to the U.S. for some college friends' weddings. And before I even got out of the airport at JFK, I checked my phone, and I had a message from one of my old colleagues that said, "Hey, Tarek, I think this job is perfect for you. I don't know where in the hell of the world you are right now, but you should check it out." And it was perfect for me, but my old career, not where I wanted to head. And so, long story short, I ended up applying because I wasn't clear where I was heading. And I thought, maybe I could have this amazing year and still not miss my career path. And everyone said, you're committing corporate suicide. Right. So I went for it. I took the job. But pretty quickly, I realized my heart was elsewhere. To go from such a drastic change of being with, some of the poorest communities in the world and feeling like I was making a difference, to then helping some of the wealthiest people in the world indirectly, was too much for me to handle. And so I gave it a year, and then at that time I bought another one-way ticket. Okay. I did another marathon before leaving. And yeah.
And so, at maybe what was maybe not your lowest moment, maybe the community that you were in, what did you see when you were in Kenya and you were with these communities that, as you said, it made you feel you had a social obligation to do more, and eventually that's the path you went on. Can you touch on maybe a moment, something that you saw, that you heard, that really just resonated with you and kind of was the birthing of what you're doing now?
Sure. I mean, the very first thing that came to my mind was, so my work was more involved with microfinance and meeting with people that were borrowers on Kiva's website, so that it crowdsources funds around the world. It's pretty cool, really cool initiative. But there was a day that I visited a slum and went to basically an orphanage type school, and I had never seen anything like that, and I had some serious culture shock, and I remember just like going back to my hotel that day and just cried. I mean, I just felt very guilty for not having done more, and I came from a pretty like high-end culture in New York City. I mean, New York City's expensive, and the people I worked with made a lot of money, and to think that like a dollar can make a difference in someone's life per day when people are blowing hundreds of dollars in an evening. So I couldn't reconcile, my brain could not reconcile such disparity in this world. And I still feel guilty. I mean, I feel like there's a lot more I could be doing now, and I still feel like I probably could do a hell of a lot more. So, but you know, I think we all just need to feel comfortable with where we are and what path we're on, and do the best that we can, and use those emotions to drive positive change, either in our own lives or in others' lives. But you know, sad days and sad moments can actually serve you well, you know, and I think that day served me well.
And then, you know, in that discomfort is where we grow, right? And that's sort of what keeps driving us. The moment we get comfortable, it's hard for us to make change for ourselves, let alone anyone else. So in that moment, so now you're 100 countries. Give me some of the highlights of a few of the places, the lessons that you learned along the way that eventually brought us to what we'll get into with Nomads Giving Back and whatnot. But yeah, there's a couple places that stand out, places that you visited, that you know, for someone, because I mean, those moments, and to continue down that career path. At this point now, are you working for yourself? Are you working with a company? How are you maintaining a lifestyle, being remote and nomading and traveling?
Sure. So to take the first part of your question about where I've traveled and what I've learned from that. So the second time I quit and moved on was 2015, and I went straight to the Taj Mahal. After running my first ultra marathon, I did a double marathon in San Francisco, and then the next day, straight to Taj Mahal, like literally from the airport, and that was magical. And then a week later, I did the craziest thing in my life. I drove a rickshaw, like a tuk-tuk, yep, across India from top to bottom, 4,000 kilometers. Basically driving all day, every day for 2 weeks from sunrise to sunset. And this little, for those of you who don't know, it's like a golf cart basically. And India has, you know, I've been to quite a few places, and India probably tops the list on how crazy the driving can be. Yes. So it was an adventure. And, you know, I still think that like what it served me well was that I really sort of lost myself, like both literally got lost many times. But it was great to kind of like just, you know, be in the most remote areas where there are no foreigners, certainly not driving rickshaws, and figuring things out. You're like, Google Maps is lying, there's no river here. And you're like, okay, well, how do I cross the river? And I hired some guy to take me in the rickshaw on a raft across the river, and then we just keep going, you know. And the damn thing broke down 20 times.
I've been in a rickshaw, yeah, they're not the most stable. I get scared. Yeah, definitely understand that.
Yeah, so that thing broke down like 20 times, and it was an adventure to try to figure out how do you fix this thing without speaking the language. And you know, one of the lessons I learned is like how amazing some places are in this world, like India, where every single time it broke down, without fail, within 2 minutes, somebody was there to help me. Unbelievable. Like sometimes they wouldn't even come talk to me. They would just go straight to the engine, fix it, and go off their way. One time this guy helped me push it for 45 minutes in the hot sun, and I kept offering him money. He was like, no. And at the end, I'm like, listen, how do I repay you for this? And he was like, I won't take money. I was like, how? Give me something. And he looked down and he looked back up at me in my eyes and looked down, looked back up real shyly and said, will you be my Facebook friend? You know, and I was just like so touched by the sense of community and connectedness and togetherness that India and other parts of the world come with. But like, I think, you know, that was one lesson, was just sort of like, sometimes you need to lose yourself in order to find yourself. And I think it's even more than finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. Like finding these experiences. And, you know, another lesson would be about finding the energies who really inspire you, who you want to be like, who have experiences that they feel the way you want to feel. And for me, like I ended up, one of my favorite memories is hiking Nepal. And I took a month where I went completely offline, which was really hard for someone like me with my busy mind. And I went vegetarian for the first time randomly, and then I did a lot of hiking by myself, and then I joined a group, and we hiked to Mount Everest base camp, and then I ran the highest marathon in the world, starting at the base camp on the last day of that month. And again, for me, that was like an impossible. Like I was not ever thought that was in my cards. And most people who would look at me would say that's not in your cards. And anyone who knew me in the past definitely would not say that. But for me, I just felt on top of the world, literally, but also figuratively. And it gave me a lot of confidence to just go after it.
And what year was this?
That was the November 2015.
2015. So at this point, and you've continued to prove, you know, to yourself and to others that you can do the impossible. With this moment, when you have literally achieved that for yourself, what was next for you? How did you what did you continue on in your travel journey, and why?
Bali.
Okay.
So we're talking here from Bali,
Yeah.
Mama Bali, and I came here for the second time in 2016. And I just fell in love. I started in Ubud, and I started connecting with these co-working spaces like Ubud and Outpost, and you know, we're an amazing tropical nomad here. But it was new for me to learn about these digital nomads, co-working spaces, and I joined some startup weekends, and I met such incredible people. And that month, my first month in Ubud, I bumped into Chrissy, the same woman I met in the streets in New York, who inspired me.
She's back in her story.
She's back in her story. And yeah, so I met incredible people like her, and I felt like, wow, okay, all these people I admire because they are leaving the conventional life behind. They're going after their dreams, facing their fears, often creating something entrepreneurial. And this is all the vibe that I want to get into. And especially after backpacking for so long, I was tired of having that first conversation with someone 100 times. And I wanted to have like 100th conversation with one person, you know, and the beauty of the community. And but I knew I wanted to get an impact. So I'd often ask a lot of these fellow, you know, nomads, I'd say like, how do you connect with the locals, and how do you give back to the communities? And I'd almost always hear the same answer: I don't know. But most of them would say, I don't know, but if you figure it out, let me know.
And for you, you're like, challenge accepted.
Yes, exactly. I mean, when I heard it enough times, I said, okay, well, there's this gap, there's this opportunity to solve the problem I want to give back, and I don't know how, especially among these like nomad capitals, because it's very easy to fall into these bubbles. And it's just not intentional often. It's just a path of least resistance. I'm very guilty of it many times. But I wanted to see if we can mobilize, you know, these nomads and expats and remote workers, we're a collection of individuals. We're not like an organization. So I felt like the movement needed some sort of structure, some leadership behind mobilizing the collective power.
And is this where, would you now say that was kind of the moment where ideas were sparked for Nomads Giving Back? Because I know that was 2018. So there's still this couple-year piece where were you involved in certain social causes? How were you galvanizing the communities around you? I ask because, you know, your story is, is such a beautiful ode to just wanting to connect, make impact, change, and you constantly challenge yourself, which is sometimes hard for people to do. And for you, I think is something that you actually pride yourself on and to do so. So for anyone who is, feeling that need of like, I want to do more, but I don't know how, and I have the moments where I feel I should be doing more, but that's my obligation. Were there any moments like that for you? Because of course you've built so many incredible initiatives, which we'll get into. But as someone who is just inspiring by just the way in which you lead life, I imagine you're human, and you would have had those moments of, can I really do this? How do I do this? Am I even going to be able to sustain this? So, is there something that you could maybe shed some light on?
Yeah, really good question. There was a pivotal story in my life where. Around 2017, 2018, around that time, I just kept going to these amazing things. Like one of our friends, Dennis in the back, was with Nomad Cruise, and I got really inspired by these types of events like Mind Valley and these co-working spaces. But I knew I wanted to take my life to the next level, but I just didn't know how. And I was living in Colombia, and I started having like a bit of a spiritual awakening. And knowing that there's something more, and I wanted to really just elevate my game in life. And then, right around the exact same day, the time, someone sent me, a dear old friend of mine sent me this thing called the Bali Hope Ultra. Okay. And the moment I saw it, I had goosebumps because it basically combined everything in my life that I wanted to do. It was an ultra marathon, Bali's first ultra marathon. 84 kilometers from Lavina in the top to Canggu. Finish line, old man's, believe it or not. And so it would have been the hardest race I would have ever done at the time. And then, I'm really into travel, and Bali to me was, if I had to pick one at the top of the list, for me it was Bali because that's where I had the most personal growth. Colombia is a very close second. No offense, Manu. And the third thing I was passionate about was social impact. And the whole purpose behind Bali Hope Ultra was to collect only 13 runners to run across Bali and do a big fundraiser. And the goal was to raise 100,000 Australian dollars to put 100 Balinese kids through school. And I was really sort of afraid to put myself out there back then, and just to do the fundraiser, man, I'd have to tell everyone I was going to do a run. All those other runs, I never told anyone. I would just go do it, and then if I did it, I would take the picture and be like, look, I did it. This would be like, hey, I'm doing this run in 3 months and 2 months, and will you share some donations to help these kids? So that to me was the biggest challenge at that point.
So showing up for yourself and others, but then now being accountable to everyone else who is now basically relying on you or on you succeeding, which is then going to impact whether the money is raised. And so having sort of that kind of dotted line effect of
Exactly.
the loop back is where you start to feel. So in that moment, because part of what you then created, right, if we want to kind of get into the sweet spot with Nomads Giving Back, was about inspiring all of us who are away, nomads, remote workers, to give back to the communities that we call home. And so then you decide to make that your life's work. Not only am I just going to do a marathon and raise money and give back to the community that way, but now I'm actually going to create an organization, an enterprise that does so. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So that experience really did inspire me because I just thought it created a win-win-win scenario. Mm-hmm. It benefited me because I was able to accomplish something and raise funds for the kids, and the kids was the most important reason for it. But even my community were inspired by the whole story. And I thought, wow, 13 people can have an impact on 100 kids' lives. And so I thought, imagine if we can mobilize the nomad movement. And that was the conception of the idea. And then going back to the Nomad Cruise, I gave a talk about my life journey. I set these 3 big goals before turning 40. Okay. And they were to explore 100 countries, to fuel my soul, to run 25 marathons, to challenge my body, and to create a social enterprise to expand my mind as well as my heart. And so that was the theme of the talk, and I used that talk to declare the vision for Nomads Giving Back. And that was now 3 years and 2 months ago, and it's been a beautiful journey. I feel like a lot of people resonate with the mission, and a lot of people rally behind it. I have this now today. I have an incredible global team. A few of us are here right now. Actually, my very first teammate ever was in Colombia, and her name is Manuela. And we met from the very first month 3 years ago, and I convinced her to move to Bali, and she's right here in the front row 3 years later. Yeah. And then we have just an incredible team all around the world. We have even Tabiso and Nini and Wisnu. And what we ended up doing is to help solve that problem. I want to give back, and I don't know how. What I felt was important is to build relationships, to actually understand what the needs are in the local communities, and not try to recreate anything, but just collaborate, give them a limelight, try to give them more what they need. So we built lots of relationships with social causes, and especially in Colombia and in Bali, and we just brought people together, because community is a huge part of about what we're all doing. And so we've had 120 plus events over the last 3 years. And lots of people have been behind us. We've had panel discussions like this, where we bring people and we give them a platform to speak about the causes. We're all about informing and inspiring and empowering people to get back to local communities. And so the empowering is how. But before you can know how, you need to know why. You need to be inspired. But before that, you need to know what. What are the local social challenges where you are? I mean, I'm still learning every day after being in Bali for so long, what kind of things are going on that I'm not visible in a day-to-day. And you see that the social causes that are closer to these different issues are really making a difference. And we built a volunteer matching program for free. So if anyone's ever interested in volunteering, they can come to us, and we matched them with the causes that we're partnering with. We do a lot of advocacy. So we have a really amazing advocacy team that promotes on our social medias, our newsletters, our Facebook groups, our Clubhouse. We love spreading the word of all the great impact work going on. And we do a little bit of fundraising and help other people fundraise as well.
So you touched on, the first part of that is identifying the what. So how do you and your team identify what the issues are, the areas of need or growth in communities like Bali and abroad?
We talk to people. So, for example, I can't emphasize enough the importance of engaging the local communities, and especially local impact leaders, as humbly as possible, and try to understand what are the issues. And really, we've been more of a supporter rather than doing. It wasn't just till recently that we now are having our own direct impact, which I'll be happy to share about. But that's really it. And then we try to give them a limelight. The most common needs I hear from impact leaders, especially locals, is that they don't necessarily have the time or the desire to do a lot of marketing and knowing how to connect with the foreigners that might want to help. So that's our sweet spot, is that our team's full of social media experts, and we have a community of foreigners. And so we were able to help complement the existing work that they're doing by bringing, whether it's volunteers, whether it's some funds, whether it's just a nice support by sharing on advocacy efforts. But along the way, we realized that we also want to create our own direct impact, and we wanted to also build more sustainability for our own organization. We decided to create Nomads Skillshare on top of Nomads Giving Back. So it's the same organization, same community, but a more focused initiative on helping people to empower them to learn the skills to live the life they imagined. So
before we get into that a little bit deeper, how do you counteract, or do you feel you need to counteract? I mean, there are, many expats and bules living in Bali and abroad who say, I want to help, I want to do something, and sometimes it can come across as just do-gooders who just want to come in, upper middle class. We have the benefit of time, let's say, and some disposable income to come in and change. But with the transit nature that are these places, you're kind of in and you're out. And so how does Nomads Giving Back counteract any of those, potential challenges or questions versus, as you said, making an impact and making it sustainable versus just kind of coming in as a one-stop shop to do something and then we're out and on to the next?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. I think it's inevitable that that's going to happen to some level, but we want to minimize that as much as possible, because a lot of people have the best of intentions, and they may have unintended consequences. I mean, even for our own organization, sometimes there's people that want to help us out, and then they're not able to honor the commitment for whatever reason, and it can be a real challenge. But they didn't mean to. So I think, especially when we're talking about local communities, we want to be extra sensitive to that fact. And I think building capacity building into the operations of the organization is important. And if there's a volunteer that's going to be matched with them, it's really essential that the assignment or the arrangement is as clear as possible up front, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that the expectations are aligned. So through our volunteer matching program now, I think we've helped more than 60 partners with different volunteers through connecting them. Many of them were very successful and effective, and some of them didn't pan out. So we're just constantly trying to find out, okay, well, what went wrong here, and how do we minimize that from happening? And I think a lot of it is communication up front, transparency, and alignment. One nice thing that we did is we do a lot more matching remotely volunteering. The whole world is embracing remote work now and working via Zoom, et cetera. So then the ones that were more in person before, there's less a likelihood of a disruption, because even if the person's traveling, doesn't mean they have to stop what they're doing. I think previously to the pandemic, it was much more, everything was face-to-face.
And so now, entering the pandemic, how has that, because I think for anyone as an entrepreneur, it's challenging enough just to decide to be your own boss, work for yourself, be away from, the stability and the matrix that does give us a lot of comfort. And then add to that being a social entrepreneur during a time where it is challenging, but it also is what sort of, I think, instigates the need to do more and to be better. So what are some of the challenges you have faced as a social entrepreneur?
Yeah, who knew entrepreneurship was hard? My dear friend Bianca's in the front row. She knows we talk about the challenges. And the pandemic, who knew that was going to come? So, I mean, I had my fair share of challenges of trying to create something that's not just impactful, but sustainable. And we keep making progress. If you look at it, it's kind of like, I don't know who here has ever tried to lose weight or maybe gain weight, but you don't want to weigh yourself every hour. You got to check in every week, every month. And I think if I look at ourselves quarter on quarter, we made a lot of progress. But there were some tough times, especially when the pandemic hit, because it really made us having to pivot. And refocus our energies, because it just wasn't sustainable to do the kind of things we were doing. I mean, our first 65 events were all in person at places like Tropical Nomad. And then all of a sudden, everything shut down, and there's not much nomading, and there wasn't much giving back because everyone was, worried about their money. Right. So it affected us a lot. But then our amazing team really strategized and said, okay, what are we aligned with? What was working well for us? And we wanted to do some impact trips, but we really also wanted to do more skill sharing. And since the whole world went online in terms of education, universities, my sister teaches at a university, she went online. So we said, okay, well, skill sharing can be done online. It's accepted now. So we decided to go deep into that and added the new brand just because it would make more sense to the marketplace, the world that we teach skills. And since then, we've created courses. We've done some in-person, and also now we have self-paced online, and also we can do it live in Zoom online as well. And we decided to focus firstly on remote work skills, given our reach, our audience, our team. And we have 3 courses: how to get your dream online job, how to become a social media manager, how to become a virtual assistant. So we decided to start with these courses that were both appealing to nomads, remote workers, but then also where locals and local communities like Bali, where we are, Indonesia, and others, where they can also get remote work jobs and skills through us. Yeah. So we have a buy one, give one scholarship program. So for every course that someone takes with us, we will give a scholarship to a less privileged student. And it's been great. We have one guy in the background, in the audience, Wisnu, was one of our first students, and he's taken 2 of our courses, and then he joined our team.
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful full circle moment. I can't wait to hear more and talk. So it's wonderful to see that as you create Nomads Giving Back. Now they're giving back. You're now also with Nomads Skillshare, allowing people to upskill or learn a skill to allow them to live a life that they imagine to be remote, and then also provide that to the local communities who may not be as financially privileged to do so. And so it's kind of like everything is feeding that same system. And so they're inspiring themselves by inspiring others. How do you inspire your team? Like what are some of the things that you do, or maybe don't do, but just the way that you are with them to inspire yourself to inspire them?
Well, it's a great question. Actually, our tagline at Nomads Giving Back is inspire yourself, inspire the world. Okay. And our logo is a spiral with the heart in the center. And I really feel like we need to have some level of self-inspiration before we can even help others. It's like the oxygen mask on the plane story. And then it becomes this virtuous cycle. So first I would say, they inspire me. My team inspires me. I mean, we have a bunch of them here right now. And, so many of them are volunteering their time behind this mission. And we wouldn't have 100 team members around the world right now if it wasn't for this collective shared vision that we all have. So that's what inspires me. And I hope that in return I'm inspiring them. What I try to do is lead by example as much as I can, and just show up every day and put a smile on, most of the time, not all the time. But, I think they see me as someone who's hardworking, resilient, and just trying my best every day.
And how would you say that, one of the things that you guys are offering, and you talked about this before, and I think we've talked about this privately, is you're offering that scholarship program to Indonesians. So why that?
So, I mean, part of the overall challenge we're trying to help fix here, at least do our part, is that foreigners like us are benefiting so much from these beautiful communities. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Right? We have choice. And a lot of times, I think people probably are assuming that we're making a difference from spending money and travel industry. But honestly, there's also a lot of unintended consequences. And I feel like if people really understood more about the unintended impact, like raising costs for locals, the cultural changes, so a lot of people aren't paying taxes, and so it's how can we, level set it? And I think the biggest difference of these bubbles, why are the foreigners sticking with foreigners and locals with locals? There's a sometimes language barrier, but most often socioeconomic barrier. You'll see, in Bali and many nomad capitals, there's foreigners sitting on their cafes, working on their laptops, and they're being served, their third cappuccino for the day. And those 3 cappuccinos is probably what some of the waiters are making in a week. And the thing is that some of these people working on the computer, they don't have Harvard PhDs. They may have taken a 3-month social media course and now can charge 30, 50 euros an hour and live this amazing life in paradise. And it just sometimes drives me crazy when some locals, some Balinese people that I meet every day speak really good English, are really hardworking, and the only difference is a skill. And the thing is, there's often this poverty trap of, they can maybe take the course even if it's free, but how do they have the time if they need to make the money for their family for that day? So that's really the spirit behind the scholarship program, is that we have skills that we can offer, and there's such a disparity that doesn't need to be there. It doesn't need to be there. We're not talking about 6-year degrees that cost $250,000 in the US. We're talking about hundreds of dollars and dozens of hours could change lives. And that's where we're heading.
How do you, or if you've had to solve, because I know some of the work that I've done, the challenges they have is a lot of them don't have access to laptops, phones, etc., to do the remote learning, to learn those skills. So how do you counteract that when thinking about these programs that you offer for them? That's
a great question. So what we had to think hard about our team is that there's a big spectrum of need, right? And in any business in general, you need to have a niche, but especially that also relates to the impact you want to have. And where we're starting out as is we think that from like if you rate people from a 1 to a 10 on their level of computer literacy and English skills, we would love to help the ones at the lower echelon, but we're not there yet. We're aiming for like the medium that have intermediate computer skills and intermediate English or above. Because I think that's where within our capacity and our skills we're able to do at this point. I would love to keep building and offer more opportunity for everyone. But that's our sweet spot, and we want to make sure we just don't, the saying, you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. You teach him how to fish, he'll eat forever. But we want to also take them to the lake, meaning like what's their first opportunity. Like, for example, Wisnu, he joined our team after taking our course as a volunteer to help out, and we're giving him opportunities to learn some new skills that maybe he wouldn't have had the opportunity to get in a real paid job. But then now he'll have the skills, and he'll be able to like interview, and we also have a really great community of people that are looking to hire social media managers, that are looking to hire virtual assistants. Actually, one of my friends who's an entrepreneur in the front row hired one of my teammates in the back row to help out with social media. So we're really good at like connecting people and trying to create, win-wins for everybody.
Because we had that makes a lot of sense. We had a guest here, I think a couple weeks back, Adrian Keat, and he talked about having to have a local champion. We can come in here with our skills, with our degrees, with our education, our do-gooder hearts, but unless we champion a local who can continue doing that work. And so in a lot of ways, by you and your team offering these skills, the scholarships for them to lift themselves out of what might be, especially in a place like Bali, which we've all witnessed, has been so affected by the lack of tourism, to allow them to have a skill that they can then take with them that then allows them to kind of give back to their community and help their community rise. So are there any wins or any just really amazing moments that you've got to experience or witness recently that has given you sort of the drive to continue going even during these challenging times?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there were many wins. A couple of my favorite memories is we've done a couple impact trips where we went to a local village by a lake. Our dear friend Nalom from Getaway Camp helped lead this with us, and we brought a bunch of foreigners and locals together to many from our team actually, and spent a beautiful weekend getting to know the villagers. We did like a language exchange with the kids. And lots of outdoors activities. That was really fun. And, with the Skillshare, I mean, just launching Nomads Skillshare, I mean, hats off to our global team. That was, it's hard to figure these things out. We went through an accelerator program, working really hard to build a business model, and then the marketing team with the strategy. There are so many people that played an important piece in this puzzle. And we launched Nomads Skillshare on our second birthday at Nomads Giving Back, and then launched our first courses on our last birthday 2 months ago. So every single one of these milestones, when we complete a course, when we get our first student, when we give our first scholarship out, it's just those are positive signs to like really keep us going. If
someone wanted to, or I guess if we were to ask you, what is it the 3 things you could use right now to continue this path forward, to offer the scholarships, to offer the skills, all that? Like if it, maybe necessarily isn't monetary based, but what could people do to help support that vision, to allow you guys to impact more people? What would it be?
Great question. I mean, I just love where we're heading, and if this resonates with you, the mission, I would love for you to reach out. We have a growing team, an amazing team. They're like family to me. So we have opportunities for people to join our team, to join our courses as students. If they want to support the scholarship program, obviously we'd be happy with that. And yeah, and then also like let us help you. So if there's any social impact initiatives or organizations that you are leading or supporting, this is a true collective. So we will be happy to raise awareness of your social causes on our social media, our newsletters, our Facebook groups, and really it's all about connecting the dots. One of my friends is here that has a food bank here in Bali, and we had a chai the other day, and it's just asking each other like, hey, how can we help each other have an impact? Because, you know, as cheesy as it is, we're stronger together.
If you were to talk to your younger self when you had those clues for the work that you're doing, because you think about the clues that you felt that you really wanted to make that change, and you're doing it now, and you met the one who gave you the blueprint. If you were to talk to yourself, and we say, you know, there's that saying that the past is not a place of residence, it's a place of reference. So when you refer back to those moments, are there things that you would do differently or you would have done sooner to get you on the path that you're on right now?
I'd shave my goatee in college. I saw a photo the other day. I'm like, what was that? I mean, I could talk for hours about the things I wish I knew. But I think the first thing that comes to mind, I think, is to really surround yourself with the people who inspire you, who bring out the best in you, who see the best in you. Because, you know, I spent a lot of my life swimming upstream, professionally at least. I've always had, luckily, like a loving family and some close friends who cared about me. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all aligned on what kind of life I want to live. So I'd say, like, seek out the people who inspire you, because energies are contagious.
And if we could buy you, Tarek Kholoussy, in a bottle, on a shelf, if Nomads Giving Back is
$1, $2,
was giving out merch, and one could buy you in a bottle, what would you say then, as of who you are now and how you feel, the top 3 ingredients would be? Not your favorite spices or flavors, but just some of the traits that you feel you embody or people have told you, or the words that resonate. What would the top 3 ingredients be if we could bottle you up and sell it?
No GMOs. Good question. So I would say idealism, for better or worse. I'm idealistic. I love, I'd say, inspiration and commitment.
Okay, well, with that, we have such an incredible audience in front of us. I want to give everyone a chance to ask some questions. So we have a mic going around. I think this is one of the beautiful things about having this live studio audience. It makes for such a dynamic and engaging environment and gives people access to dive into your story. So if any questions from the audience?
So I'll start us off for this round. Yeah, probably to add a bit of mic volume. There you go. Firstly, Bhavna, Tarek, well done. What a great interview. And, you know, I think a lot of people who know you, Tarek, realize that they don't know you at all. 25 marathons? Come on! Who does that? You know, running across, you know, like the Himalayas, you know, like the ultra marathons, and just your commitment, you know, to a cause and commitment to your word and the commitment to your actions. So to start us off with the questions, you know, maybe there's some people who are kind of saying, well, this guy Tarek, he's a dude, right? He's cool. Now, I have these dreams too. I have these goals too. How do I do it? Because, you know, again, 25 marathons, I haven't even done one. And I used to run a lot. I might reconsider. But if there was maybe like a 3 or a 5 step process that people who really want to achieve something extraordinary in their lives, like, what would you say? How would you say, through your own experience, to go about it?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words, Robert, and for having me on SpeakuP Monday. I think it's such an incredible initiative, and I've really enjoyed your past interviews with some really amazing people and friends. So the first thing that came to mind when you asked me about like what advice I would give to someone going after some big goals, I just heard this quote a few days ago that it's the first thing that came to mind is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, all right? And I think, a lot of us sometimes get option paralysis when we have so many choices, or we get fearful of such a big challenge. And I think what's important is to try to still aim big, but reverse engineer the process in a realistic way. And of course, most of us know about the whole SMART goals, like specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. But it really is important to project manage the hell out of it. And to not be so hard on ourselves that we discourage ourselves from not trying, because mistakes are part of the journey. Mistakes are a good sign. I mean, going with the running analogy, only those who go too far can possibly find out how far one can go. And I feel that's true in the running world, but it's true in real life. So I would say, aim big, but try to project manage it, reverse engineer the process, and find yourself support. That's the most important thing, is finding the champions. I'm very touched that some of my close friends here in Bali and old friends showed up today because they care, and that means a lot to me. So that's really inspiring. So support system so important, and faith. Believing in yourself, believing in what's possible, and just drowning yourself with inspirational sources, whether that's music, books, nature, meditation. There's so many forms, but Bianca and I, we always talk about how we just have everything in the calendar about everything that's going to serve us well for inspiring ourselves. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you, brother. And on that note, Bianca, I know you wanted to ask a question, so I'll pass it to Bianca now.
Thanks, Rob.
I felt it.
You felt it, yeah. So great interview, Tarek, and pleasure to call you a close friend and confidant. Question to you: you had 3 goals before you were 40. Now, I don't like to say the next milestone that's coming up in your life, but it starts with a 5 and ends with a 0. What are your 3 goals before you are that number?
Oh God, me at 50?
It's not so bad.
I think my hair will reach my feet by then. That's one thing, is I haven't really cut my hair since I left the States. So we'll see at 50 whether I cut my hair. The 3 goals before I turn 50. My God.
Sorry, I know.
Let's see. Is my mom watching this? Because I don't want to promise kids, but who knows? Who knows if I'll have a family? That could be in the cards.
The communities you've created are like a family, so technically
That's true.
Created that one.
My adopted family. Yeah, I'm not really craving traveling as much as I used to. So, I feel like there's a different chapter of everyone's life. I would love to for our team and I to make Nomads Giving Back and Nomads Skillshare a sustainable, global, impactful organization that's here to stay and is self-sustaining, That would be a dream come true by 50, hopefully sooner. And I would, the family thing, who knows? I'm not 100% sure it's my path, but if it is, that could be a game changer. And what's the third thing? I would say I would love to get more into the healing world. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but I have the utmost respect for people who heal, and that can take many different forms, and I'll see what happens there.
Awesome. Can't wait to watch.
Thanks, Bianca.
Does anyone else have a question? I know you do. Someone over here after Chris wants to say something.
Thanks, Rob. Tarek, wonderful story. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Really wonderful. Congrats. You run 25 marathons. runners have the dreaded DNF, did not finish. Have you had any DNFs in those 25?
So the answer is no.
Wow.
But I don't think that's something I'm proud of, actually. I think that, so the question, I don't know if everyone heard, was that, did I have any DNFs, do not finish, like a marathon of those 25 that I didn't finish? And I actually finished every one. And I used to take pride in that, thinking like, I'll never give up. And there are a few that where I thought I wouldn't make it. You know, one of my runner friends told me once, a half marathon is a mental challenge. Sorry, let me start over. A half marathon is a physical challenge. A marathon is a mental challenge. And an ultra marathon is a spiritual challenge. And that can mean a lot of things, but I feel like I kind of get it, because I feel like there were times where my body couldn't do it, my mind couldn't do it, but there's an energy source that's beyond comprehension that can get you through something. That said, only those who go too far can possibly find out how far one can go, which means that, did I ever really test my limit? And, you know, failure is good. It shows that you tried something that you didn't know you can do. So a part of me wishes that I did have a DNF and I went even harder on one of these races, and maybe I'll give it another try.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the second part of my question was hoping that there was going to be one, and I was going to ask what you'd learned from it, because I think so often knowing when to stop and the lessons from it are sometimes more valuable than reaching the finish line. And I see, particularly in these times, I think there's many people in communities that haven't realized. I get your point about going as far as you can, but sometimes the right thing is to actually realize that the best thing is a DNF, and so often another door opens. And I'm just interested then, you haven't had a DNF, you've spoken about so many other doors opening for you, and you know, you might have even looked on your corporate career as a DNF because you saw the writing on the wall and walked away. But just as a lesson to so many people in these times that are pushing so hard, it's actually okay to be a DNF and look at other opportunities.
100%. I'm so glad you said that. Like, I like to think of it as, you know, we grow outside our comfort zone, but there's also a danger zone. And if you cross into the danger zone, it can be counterproductive. It can hurt you, whether we're talking about running, whether we're talking about business. I do think, at least in my journey, the danger zone's a lot farther than we give credit. Sometimes the mind makes excuses. My mind makes excuses that I can't do something, but I really can. But we also have to have some level of awareness that don't push yourself too hard. I think where I did have some DNFs is in my career, and I did push myself to an unhealthy level of stress. And you just learn from life. You learn from experiences. Thank you.
So anyone from over here? George, looking at you. No? Everyone's good over here? No questions? There you go. I could feel that there was at least one over here. There you go, man.
Tabiso.
Yo, well done to both of you. That was incredible. I guess my question would be, obviously Nomads Giving Back has done a lot in Colombia, a lot in Bali. But staying on Bianca's theme about what you envisioned before the big 5-0, is there where else would you like to see Nomads Giving Back operating country-wise?
Great question, Tabiso. He's asking where, beyond Bali, beyond Colombia, where would we want to have an impact in the world at Nomads Giving Back and Nomads Skillshare? So, honestly, I feel that there is so many beautiful places and beautiful communities that I've had the opportunity to visit. And we actually did have events in 10 different countries in the world. Most of them were Bali and Colombia, but we did touch 10 countries. I feel like there's so much opportunity where there's a greater level of impact needed. So when I think of some of the more countries that have poverty, the first ones that come to mind is I have a special connection to Kenya and to Nepal, and there's a lot of need there. And I'm just trying to figure out within our current business model, we're currently teaching digital skills. So connecting with the right organizations that can benefit from what we're offering. In terms of need, I would always want to help the ones that need the most help, period. In terms of sharing digital skills, there are, like East Africa is known as the Silicon Valley of social innovation. So there's a lot of opportunity there. My motherland, Egypt, of course, would be great to help. And also this is a collective. So we have a really empowered team. So I would ask the team, like, who do you want to help and where are they coming from, and we can together make those decisions.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Thank you, brother. For Guido, you had your hand poised. There you go.
Since you're pushing the microphone to me, I shall do it. First of all, thank you. Very enjoying listening to you.
Thank you.
I have one question, and I like to say it to Rob. We always consider, or I personally believe, that Bali could be the springboard for the world. Because this is a country who is pretty new on the last 10 years. It opened up the borders. Everyone has arrived here and left and arrived and left. And I think the Balinese, number one, have to learn a lot more from us as we have to learn from them. So it's not just it's them and just us. Now we have to work together. We had this conversation just earlier on. We got so much to offer, and they got so much to offer. The Balinese come a lot more from the heart. They may not understand a lot of things what we are talking about. It's like you just mentioned about the 3 cappuccinos, and the Balinese, said, my God, I could feed the family like that, and we're all guilty of that. So I'd love to catch up with you some other time, not tonight.
Sure.
I already met Bianca as well. I think we have met some very interesting people the last few years through the Tropical Nomad and before when Robert actually kicked these things off. And I feel it just needs more and more people sort of on a similar wavelengths and look at that. What's the base here in Bali? And where can we go to the next phase and have a plan and find the right people to resonate with us. And I think it's a momentum which can be achieved over the next 5 or 10 years. I don't think we need to wait till we're 50 or 80 or 100. I think there's a lot of things going to change very, very fast in the next 2 or 3 years. So thank you so much.
Completely agree with you. There's so much potential here in Bali with amazing people, amazing local leaders.
And look, I know we've got a little bit to go. Next week, there's a guy called Matt Adams that hardly any of you will know. Matt Adams is like a Buddhist priest, right? He's from the US originally, and he is a coach to some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. He is a phenomenal guy, and he's going to be here next week. He's been coming to Bali for more than 20, 30 years, and he's a guy that you'll get along with, and we're going to have a really great conversation next week. But all of these threads interact, and it's really interesting to see how it is unfolding. So just touching upon what you said. And obviously Tarek and I think we met, was it Nomads, that Nomads event in Ubud, Akasha? I think that's when we first met, right?
What was it called? The Nomad something. Anyway, it was the Akasha event.
Yeah, I think that was it. And
Nomads for Change.
Nomads for Change, that's right. And one of the most beautiful things about here in Bali is that there are some phenomenal people here who you would never realize were here, who love Bali, and who are really up for sharing, collaborating, and creating with Bali some things which can see us into the future. Again, what you said about learning from one another. I think is so powerful. And it all kind of rolls back to that Trihita Karana, which I'm learning more and more about every not every day, but maybe every couple of weeks. I have a conversation about it with a Balinese person, and I get a different understanding of it, you know. So I know there's more to go, but I just want to thank you, brother T, Tarek, for taking the time and to respond to our invitation, and just for being a phenomenal human being, so inspiring, and more than that, you're living by example. So it's not talk, it's actually action. And I think that that's really important and powerful for all of us to see people like you who are doing that, because it in turn can inspire us. And whoever watches this either live or on replay, like, you never know, you know, who you're touching and how you're touching them until, again, as you said, Bhavna, before, history is this retrospective. You know, and maybe in a year's time you get some, hey, Tarek, I watched this interview with you and it really shifted my awareness of what I can do, and they went out and did something. So, my brother, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So,
All right. Okay. Oh, there's one more right there, Robert.
there you go.
Yes, Tarek. Before you came here, I didn't realize that you did so many marathons. I thought marathons is something they do on Instagram. So now when I know, I'm really interested to ask you, what kept you going? Like when you was like overcoming all the difficulties when it comes to the body, you said that you had no energy. So what kept you going to your goal? You know, how you kept focus?
Yeah, so when I was running marathons, when I ran out of energy, what kept me going? I think what I'm afraid of is if I set a goal and I don't follow through, then that can be contagious to other parts of my life, where then all of a sudden I won't follow through. It would be like breaking a bond with myself. I mean, sometimes the goals were extremely hard, where I could have forgiven myself. Like I said, I think there's no shame in not finishing something that could be dangerous or harmful. But all the ones I did, I felt like I really can do this. And I wanted to honor that, my commitment to myself, that I said I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then because I was able to, it helped me build the confidence in other parts of my life. Like I credit the whole running journey for so many other things I've grown in on different parts of my life.
That's beautiful. So basically, you build your confidence out of achievements.
Exactly. I think that's a natural thing. I think we do it all the time. I mean, even like, I think it's Tim Ferriss says, first thing you should do in the morning is make your bed, because then you did something and you can check it off your list and you succeeded at it, and it sets the mindset. Like even as simple as making your bed, which I don't do, but I'm told that that's a thing. Like.
Any more questions from the audience? Okay, so I have a final question. I mean, I think we could talk for hours. I mean, the beauty of this platform is that it's a deep dive, and we can go into so many tangents. I want to hear more stories about the travels and the marathons and the work that you're doing. But to keep it contained for this episode, because we'll have you here for more, is there, or can you highlight in the past year 3 moments, one that scared you, a lesson that you learned from maybe the local community, the Balinese, and a lesson that you're still learning?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So first would be a moment that scared, in the last, let's say, year, a moment that scared you.
So a moment that scared me, I would say, that's a good one. I think I had moments of, we're talking about setting a goal and not finishing it. There are moments where I didn't know if I had it in me to put as much energy into the organization than I was. I don't see myself ever giving up, but knowing that, like, can I put in the amount of energy that I was? And I think that was scary because then I thought if I don't put out all that energy, then it might fail.
Okay. And so with that fear, just to elaborate then on that point, and that's kind of where I was getting at, was, we talked about being a social entrepreneur and how challenging that can be. And then to have an enterprise that is built upon people giving back to communities and then upskilling, giving. So it's this constant sort of push and pull. What now for you then in terms of trying to alleviate that fear or live within that fear as it being a driving factor to moving forward? How have you started to kind of quell that fear a little bit?
I had this crazy idea when that happened to take a vacation. So for the first 2.5 years, I didn't take any time off. And I was just facing the classic burnout, and so I took vacation. And guess what? It worked.
So even as people say, for those that are living, as they say, the vacation life or the paradise life, you took time out for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, I took some time off because this became my passion. It's like it's my baby, and I love my baby, and I love the family raising the baby, and so I just took so much of my energy that was creeping into other categories of my life. And so I took time off and I went offline and I did a yoga teacher training and I came back with fresh legs for the next leg of the marathon. And now I'm incorporating a lot more balance into my life. I kind of fell back into the New York mentality, even though we're here in beautiful Bali and flip-flops on the beach every day, but it can still be stressful if your goals are big. So yeah, I'm still learning every day. I'm no guru.
So what are the little hacks or things you do maybe on a daily basis, weekly, when you can't take that vacation to kind of ground yourself and to get out of that mentality, as you said, the go, go, go?
Well, I have a morning routine for the last few years where every day I wake up and I do a meditation, listen to some music that inspires me, and do a gratitude exercise where I write down the things that I'm grateful for from the previous day. So that has been helpful in kind of setting the day off on the right path. And then lately, I've been just really focusing on the wellness. I've been going to the gym every day for the last month. I think for me, with everything the way I operate, I need to maintain my wellness and fitness. But I haven't always consistently done it. Even since my running days, I kind of go through phases. So I'm still trying to build these long-term habits that last even when times get stressful with a lot of demands on your time. Right. But I think, that's life. We all have these challenges of trying to have the perfect well-being and balance. And it's funny when you try to, yourself so well and you're trying to hack your way you think, so it's fun trying to hack myself.
Okay, and then the second part of the question was, we talked a lot about sort of the love for Bali and how it's such a birthplace for so many things, and the way in which we interact with them and them as our champions in our community. What lesson have the Balinese, or one lesson to touch on, have they taught you?
I feel like I've learned a lot from being in Bali all these years. I love their positivity and resilience. This has been a really tough couple of years. I mean, Bali has their economic dependency on tourism is roughly 70 to 80% of their GDP, and there's been much less tourism in the last couple of years. And so seeing how they just come through, and you can't feel, usually I can't feel any sort of drastic change. It's more that they just continue to get creative on figuring out new ways to do well in this economy. They're very caring with each other. Their passion for their ceremonies, their nonstop commitment to caring for their families and communities. It's so inspiring. I feel not to compare cultures too much, but if another culture, pick anyone, had even half the amount of economic impact, there'd be, I feel a lot more negative repercussions on society, and we would feel it more. It's shocking that how resilient they are, and I'm so grateful for them being so open-hearted to us and understanding and welcoming of those foreigners who are here.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I think the gratitude that they have for their daily life, it does inspire us to be grateful. And, there's a saying that one of our previous guests and friends, Richard Harrington, would say is that inspiration is caught, not taught. And as Robert said earlier, you living and just showing up the way that you do. And as you just mentioned, the Balinese living and showing up the way you do, it just creates this perfect cycle of just being inspiring by just being. It doesn't need to be a celebrity or, just like a human that goes through it.
Like, how pleasant are they? Like, I mean, I just understand how people can be so happy, and I just get so excited about that. I think that's one of the things that people are so drawn to Bali is 100% the people and the way they treat us and their customs and traditions.
And so then with that, what lesson are you still learning?
I think I would love to be a better leader. I would love to continue to learn. I mean, some would say my career in the past was impressive, climbing the corporate ladder, but it's a very different background. I've worked for some reputable organizations, but being an entrepreneur, being a social entrepreneur, where you have like a lot of decisions to make and a lot of pressure, and it's sometimes tough to always be that amazing leader. So I'm learning a lot on trying to do my best, especially like a lot of our team they're just so incredible, and I want to do my part because oftentimes I feel like I'm the bottleneck, and I'm like, I want to make sure that they know how grateful I am, but I also need to sleep. I also need to take care of myself. So it's like trying to find that balance of not letting people down, trying to be the cheerleader, but also, taking care of myself. So trying to find that sweet spot.
And with that, you're, as we all are, just a work in progress, right? And that's just how we 100%. As humanity continue to get better is through those moments. We could go on and on and on, but I know we need to wrap up this particular episode. So I'm going to give you a minute to think on any kind of final words that you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye. And while you think about that, I want to just take a moment to be grateful and to thank our audience for being here. It definitely makes for a richer experience having people here to look out to ask questions, and it just creates such a dynamic and engaging environment. So thank you for taking the time to join us in person and online. Thank you so much. And also to our Tropical Nomad staff, Itchy and team, who allow us to come here week on week and share stories with this incredible setup. And without them, we wouldn't be able to have the platform or the stage to do this. So thank you for that. And of course, brother Robbie, who, for those of you who may not know, he has been doing this. He created SpeakuP about over 3 years ago. We're, I think, episode 231, so we're coming up on 250. And it has been every single Monday without fail, rain or shine, sick or not. And until recently, he was the only one in this chair. And it was actually born from an event or a series of events in his life where there were some people in his network who he lost to suicide. And for those of you who don't know, statistically, Mondays are the highest rate of suicide. So to have a place for people to come to hear a story, be inspired, feel heard, seen, maybe even make a change or reconsider something was Robert's way of giving back. And he recently gave me the honor and privilege to get to be up here in his chair and share stage with some incredible people. So thank you for the opportunity and the platform. And lastly, my amazing guest, Tarek, you, as we said, are leading by example, and the word inspiration in you would be in the dictionary next to each other by just how you show up, but in such a human way that makes us all feel like we can go through sort of the challenges that we face, take a step back, pivot, and continue to do so, and with just a heart and in terms of wanting to inspire and to galvanize a team, I think you make us all feel it's possible to make an impact. So thank you for taking the time to share your story with me here. I'm so happy to have you. And with that, the floor is yours. Any final words for the audience, any topic, how people can reach you, and how they can support Nomads Giving Back and Nomads Skillshare?
Amazing. Thank you so much. You just reminded me of this quote that I love where it says, the monkey said, "Kindly let me help you taking the fish up the tree." Basically saying that I don't necessarily feel like I know anything better than anyone else, and that we're all different animals. And, you know, the monkey thinks it's helping the fish by taking him up the tree, even though, you know, fishes aren't meant for trees. So I just want to say, like, as much as I've shared, I'm just living my life, doing my own journey, and I hope it will resonate with some people. And thank you so much to our team at Nomads Giving Back and Nomads Skillshare for making this mission so beautiful. And if anyone is interested in supporting and collaborating with us or joining us, you're welcome to. And yeah, I'm really excited for the next chapter for organization and my life. And I want to thank you so much, Bob, for inviting me, and Robert. I'm a big, big fan of both of you individually, and SpeakuP Monday, and to Ichi for hosting us at Tropical Nomad. And I look forward to the next episodes. Keep inspiring, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.